Mr Speaker.
I call the Honourable George Hawkins.
Mr Speaker, I just want to briefly acknowledge the work that has been done by the committee. And of course, I want to acknowledge the work done by officials as well. This is the third of the bills changing Auckland. The first one, of course, there was no public input. The government decided to go ahead under urgency and chop Auckland up into one big pie. And of course, we now have a situation where people have been coming and making submissions. To the second bill, the committee travelled all over the Auckland region. For this, the third bill, the committee stayed in a motel and some people came to it to make submissions. And the government say they listened. But did they? They were hard of hearing. People don't really like to see the corporatisation of their council in Auckland. And of course, well, that member mightn't believe it, but that member, all he can do when he gets up and speaks is tell a joke about booze. So his credibility has gone already. People don't like the idea of corporatisation. When you have 7 mayors and 1 chairman being exchanged for 7 CCO chairs. 7 CCO chairs. And that's what people have got. And have they got direct control or direct input? No, they don't. These CCOs, the directors, are accountable to the Auckland Council, not directly to the public. The public miss out. And of course, while the spin may have confused Bernard Aldsman and Granny Herald, I just think that having these 7 CCOs is no substitute for people having democracy. And I believe that when you start to look at the 3 CCOs, they will control over 95% of Auckland spending. Over 75% of the money will be in their hands. We have a transport CCO that will have 54% of Auckland's income to spend. And of course, everyone in Auckland knows that transport has been one of the big problems. Making it a bigger problem isn't the way to cure it. And I've got to say, water is a real worry. Will the government allow Auckland's water to be flogged off? And I think that's a possibility. But we'll have supplementary order papers in the committee stages to try and get for Aucklanders what they really want. We have an agency that looks after the waterfront, a CCO that will, an agency that will be responsible for it. Now that seems to me a bit strange because on the one hand we have a government saying we're going to get rid of the foreshore and seabed legislation and no one will own the land. No one will own the land, but this organisation will have to deal with it. And I think these are the sorts of questions that people come to us with. So we'll have 1 mayor of Auckland. Well, we've got 1 Earl of Auckland at the moment. We'll have 1 mayor. And of course, people are still upset. Penny Webster, a former Member of Parliament, still wants to keep her area out of Auckland. Did her former colleagues listen to her? No, they didn't. No, they turned off their hearing aids. They didn't listen to her. And before Rodney Hyde and John Carter start celebrating tonight with some high water wine, they should listen to what Penny Webster says. People like Bill Townsend, who worked like mad, who organised people locally, who hoped that his local MP would bring a bill to the House. But did it happen? No, it hasn't. Because these people, they actually believed that they could make a difference. From last year, when the first bill came in, no one could make a substantive difference. And that's really very sad, because all over Auckland, people had meetings. People got together and said, we'll fight this. I see it in Papakura, I see it in Menyuriwa. People who are committed. And of course, these people believe that they have been mistreated. Now, the reality is, in a democracy, people believe that they can have a say. They now know that what we're getting in Auckland is no democracy. They believe, yes, they'll be able to vote for the council, they'll be able to vote for a mayor, but they won't have any say on who sits on these CCOs and reports back to the council. So instead of being able to pick up the phone and ring your local councillor, that's all going, because that local councillor won't control any of the 75% that the CCOs have. And, well, Mr Carter may say, yeah, that's probably the first time he's actually listened to anything since he's been chairman. And I wonder why he was such a good chairman. He let people talk, but he wasn't listening. Maybe having such a friendly chairman who smiles all the time is one way through. But the reality is, local boards are the area where some people feel they'll have some say. But of course, they're not going to have as much say as they do on their present community board or their present council. People are going to miss out all around. You see, when you put 75% of Auckland into CCOs, you're really locking up Auckland. And Rodney Hyde talked about how since 1919, I think he said, when he believed that the first steps towards change took place. Well, I've got to say, people will now look back on the year 2010 with some real sorrow. Having been a local body politician, when I first got elected to the Papakura City Council back in... it was in 1980, I was just trying to remember. There was a different style of politics. And then in 89, Michael Bassett made a big change throughout New Zealand. And I think that people then started to be suspicious of local government, especially in the Auckland area. They still are. We've got people in Howick who still long to be independent, and some of them want their name back, and they don't like the name they've been given, and they're battling against it. And we see people like Pansy Wong and Morris Williamson are going to try and cash in to say they're doing something for it, but they're not really listening to Aucklanders over this big plan. I think when Rodney Hyde sits back in his rocking chair in a few years' time, retired or booted out of Parliament, probably booted out, he will reflect on the mess that he has made, because it's going to be more expensive. People already have to pay $130 million of their money for something they don't want. The government's not stumping up with the money, it's the pour